Each year, we hear from the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Director of National Counterterrorism Center, and the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who is nowhere to be seen today. Maybe Director Patel is too busy spending taxpayers' dollars flying to his girlfriend's concert on the FBI's jet to answer questions from Congress. Maybe the FBI director isn't here because he's afraid of scrutiny from Democrats who want to know what the FBI is doing to keep America safe. Or maybe Director Patel knows that the Trump administration itself is a threat to Homeland Security and want to hide from public accountability. On the other hand, Director Kent is here, which is good because we have questions for him about NCTC's work, as well as his comments about the January 6th insurrectionists he called, and I quote, political prisoners, unquote.
What you're about to hear from Benny Thompson is not a routine opening statement. This is a full-blown indictment, delivered in plain language, with zero interest in playing nice.
Who deserve to be pardoned. Some of the people he defended, however, are back in jail for crimes like plotting to murder FBI agents and possession of child pornography. It's scary that these unserious people are in charge of keeping America safe from terrorism. But what's even scarier is that they work for an unserious and unhinged president who spends most of the days designing monuments to himself and finding new ways to hide the Epstein files. All of this puts America and its lives, people who live here, at risk every day. Now, Secretary Noem, everyone knows you love the spotlight. We've seen your commercials, but what you haven't provided to the committee, despite our many requests, are the questionable contracts that you've awarded to your friends to film you on the 2028 campaign trail. Unfortunately, this is nothing new. In their one big ugly bill, congressional Republicans gave you a blank check, Secretary Noem, and you have wasted no time spending it on yourself. Instead of deploying Homeland Security grants to protect churches and synagogues from terrorism, you handed your friends a $220 million contract so they could follow you around the country with a camera. Instead of fully funding the DHS agency that protects our hospitals, schools, and electrical systems from cyber attacks, you spent $200 million to buy yourself new private jets. And instead of paying your way like the rest of us, you're living rent-free in a taxpayer-owned property that is supposed to be reserved for military leaders. Every penny that you spend on yourself represents the blood, sweat, and tears of hardworking Americans who expect their tax dollars to be spent on Homeland Security, not promoting you and your interests. Apparently, you haven't noticed that regular people are suffering under President Trump's affordability crisis. Or maybe you, like him, thinks it's a hoax and just don't care. Either way, such corrupt behavior hurts Homeland Security. But it's not just the corrupt behavior, Secretary Noem, that hurts Homeland Security. It's also your blatant disregard for the law. You cut programs and withheld congressionally appropriated money to prevent terrorist attacks and prepare for natural disaster. You eviscerated the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which was supposed to keep DHS from violating Americans' constitutional rights. Within your own department, you illegally fired employees and retaliated against whistleblowers who reported wrongdoings at DHS. And during a shutdown, when frontline employees were working without a paycheck, your press shop never stopped using its social media accounts to push out racist and xenophobic posts. Throughout your tenure, you diverted resources from critical homeland security agencies and programs to carry out an extreme immigration agenda. You illegally ordered people deported to El Salvador, despite a federal court order and Department of Justice counsel instructing you to not do so. You illegally ignored a federal court order and shipped people off to South Sudan without due process. You are illegally blocking members of Congress from conducting oversight of ICE detention facilities, even though federal law demands that we have access. In the process of carrying out this extreme agenda, at your direction, DHS has terrorized, beaten, and detained hundreds, if not thousands, of American citizens. At your direction, DHS has illegally detained and deported American citizens, including U.S. citizen children with cancer. At your direction, DHS has illegally gassed, pepper sprayed, and put their knees on the necks of Americans, including military veterans and clergy. At your direction, DHS has illegally tackled, beat up, and humiliated United States citizens, including senior citizens. At your direction, DHS has illegally tased, maced, punched, and even shot Americans. Black and brown Americans, in particular, have been racially profiled, detained, and locked up, and sometimes with tragic consequences. It's just one awful incident. A pregnant U.S. citizen was reportedly thrown to the ground, kicked and left in handcuffs for hours after immigration officers did not believe that she was an American. She later lost a baby. You cannot enforce the law by breaking the law, Secretary Noem. That's not how justice works. It's not right, and it's un-American. And when Congress tries to carry out its constitutional oversight responsibilities to question you about your department actions, you hide, often with the help of congressional Republicans. Never in the history of the committee has a Secretary of Homeland Security hidden from congressional oversight like you and your department have, Secretary Noem. Our oversight letters to you go unanswered. You owe us by extending the millions of Americans who sent us to Congress as their representatives a response to over a dozen letters. Your predecessor came before this committee regularly under administrations of both parties. But under President Trump, you and other department officials have rarely shown their faces at committee hearings. In the first year of President Biden's term, his administration made 28 appearances before this committee. 28. Under President Trump, DHS officials have appeared only 3 hearings before this committee, just 3. You, Secretary Noem, have appeared before this committee just twice. That's fewer appearances than your predecessor, Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who Republicans lambasted for not coming before the committee more often. It's interesting how my colleagues on the other side are now. Secretary Noem, I'll give you one thing. You showed up today rather than throwing a civil servant under the bus like Director Patel did. But you have systematically dismantled the Department of Homeland Security, put your own interests above the department, and violated the law. You are making America less safe. So rather than sitting here and wasting your time and ours with more corruption, lies, and lawlessness, I call on you to resign. Do a real service to the country and just resign. That is, if President Trump doesn't fire you first. I yield back.
Thompson doesn't waste a single second on pleasantries. He starts by thanking the chair for actually doing the bare minimum, holding the hearing and getting witnesses in the room. And that alone tells you where we are right now. The bar is so low that simply showing up counts as praise. That's the state of congressional oversight in 2026. Then Thompson pivots fast. He looks at the witness table and immediately calls out who's missing. The FBI director, Kash Patel. And this isn't some minor scheduling issue. This is the core of Thompson's argument. Accountability is being actively dodged. Oversight isn't failing by accident, it's being avoided on purpose. And the sarcasm? Barely concealed. Thompson floats the idea that Patel might be too busy flying around on the taxpayer dime to answer questions from Congress. That line lands hard, because it's not just about one trip or one official. It's about a culture where power shields itself from scrutiny while demanding unquestioning loyalty from everyone else. But the real target of this opening statement is standing right there. Kristi Noem. And Thompson absolutely unloads. He accuses Noem of treating the Department of Homeland Security like a personal branding operation, not a security agency, not a public trust, a stage. Cameras, contracts, jets, and taxpayer-funded perks, all while critical security programs are underfunded or outright cut. Listen closely to how Thompson frames it. He doesn't talk in abstractions. He doesn't hide behind jargon. He draws a straight line from money spent on self-promotion to money not spent protecting synagogues, churches, hospitals, schools, and power grids. And that framing matters because it makes the cost of corruption tangible. This isn't about optics, it's about priorities. And according to Thompson, Noem's priorities are crystal clear. Then comes the part of the speech where the tone shifts. The jokes disappear, the pace slows, and the allegations turn deadly serious. Thompson accuses DHS under Noem of violating court orders, of retaliating against whistleblowers, of dismantling civil rights oversight from the inside, of blocking members of Congress from legally mandated inspections, of deportations carried out in defiance of federal judges, of American citizens being detained, beaten, deported, and humiliated. He describes veterans, clergy, seniors, children, even a pregnant American citizen who, according to reports, lost her baby after being violently detained because officers didn't believe she was American. And here's the thing, Thompson doesn't shout, he doesn't grandstand, he just keeps stacking facts, allegation on allegation, pattern on pattern, and the cumulative effect is devastating. This isn't framed as a few bad incidents. It's framed as a system. A department operating with contempt for the law, shielded by political allies, and emboldened by a president who treats accountability as an inconvenience. That president, of course, is Donald Trump, and Thompson makes it clear that this is not happening in isolation. DHS, the FBI, and the broader national security apparatus are being shaped in Trump's image, hostile to oversight, dismissive of civil rights, and obsessed with loyalty over legality. And then Thompson lands the stat that really drives it home. Under the previous administration, DHS officials appeared before this committee dozens of times in just 1 year. Under Trump's current administration, three appearances, and Noem herself, just 2. That's not coincidence, that's strategy. And by the time Thompson reaches the end of his statement, there's no ambiguity left. This is not a call for reform. This is not a warning shot. This is a demand. Resign. Not because of partisan disagreement, not because of ideology, but because, in Thompson's words and framing, Kristi Noem has dismantled DHS, violated the law, and made America less safe. And here, why this moment matters. This is the long view, the part that lingers after the clip ends. What Thompson is really saying is that democracy doesn't collapse all at once. It erodes, slowly, quietly, through skipped hearings, through unanswered letters, through officials who treat the law as optional and oversight as hostile territory, through agencies that are weaponized downward against ordinary people while shielding power at the top. When oversight disappears, abuse fills the vacuum. When courts are ignored, rights become suggestions. When cameras and contracts matter more than safety and law, the system stops serving the public and starts serving itself. This isn't just a clash of personalities. It's a warning about what happens when national security is stripped of accountability and wrapped in political ambition. It's about whether the Department of Homeland Security exists to protect people or to protect power. And Thompson's final demand cuts through all of it. You cannot enforce the law by breaking the law. You cannot claim security while undermining justice. And you cannot call yourself a public servant while hiding from the public you serve. That's why this opening statement hit so hard, not because it was loud, but because it was clear. If you believe oversight matters, if you believe civil rights matter, if you believe that no official is above the law, then this wasn't just rhetoric. It was a line in the sand. And now the question is what Benny Thompson said. It's whether anyone in power is willing to prove him wrong. If this breakdown helped you understand what was really happening in that room, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think accountability still exists in Washington, or are moments like this the last line of defense?